The Book of Psalms, Psalm 136. Give thanks to Yahweh, for he is good, for his loving kindness endures forever. Give thanks to the God of gods, for his loving kindness endures forever. Give thanks to the Lord of lords, for his loving kindness endures forever. To him who alone does great wonders, for his loving kindness endures forever. To him by understanding made the heavens, for his loving kindness endures forever. To him who spread out the earth above the waters, for his loving kindness endures forever. To him who made the great lights, for his loving kindness endures forever. The sun to rule by day, for his loving kindness endures forever. The moon and stars to rule by night, for his loving kindness endures forever. To him who struck down the Egyptian firstborn, for his loving kindness endures forever, and brought out Israel from among them, for his loving kindness endures forever. With a strong hand and with an outstretched arm, for his loving kindness endures forever. To him who divided the Red Sea apart, for his loving kindness endures forever, and made Israel to pass through the middle of it, for his loving kindness endures forever. But overthrew Pharaoh and his army in the Red Sea, for his loving kindness endures forever. To him who led his people through the wilderness, for his loving kindness endures forever. To him who struck great kings, for his loving kindness endures forever, and killed mighty kings, for his loving kindness endures forever. Sihon, king of the Amorites, for his loving kindness endures forever. Og, king of Bashan, for his loving kindness endures forever, and gave their land as an inheritance, for his loving kindness endures forever. Even a heritage to Israel his servant, for his loving kindness endures forever. Who remembered us to our low estate, for his loving kindness endures forever, and has delivered us from our adversaries, for his loving kindness endures forever. Who gives food to every creature, for his loving kindness endures forever. Oh, give thanks to the God of heaven, for his loving kindness endures forever. So I seem to sense a theme here in Psalm 136. For his loving kindness endures forever. So very strange, because some of these sounded quite negative, but it's always connected with his loving kindness. You know, give thanks to Yahweh, give thanks to the Lord of Lords, to him who alone does great wonders. Hmm. And then it did a lot about creation here in verse 5. To him who by understanding made the heavens, for his loving kindness endures forever. So it's very clearly saying that he made the heavens. To him who spread out the earth above the waters. So what does that mean? Spread out the earth above the waters. Um, I guess it means, there's sea level, so that's got to be below the earth. Hmm. And he made the great lights, the sun to rule by day, and the moon and stars to rule by night. And these are all very strange, and these get highly attacked because the sun doesn't rule by day. There is no day. It's just the turning of the earth. It just happens to be what happens to be facing the sun, you know? But, hmm. And I like how he keeps talking about the stars as if there's one of them. Now that we know there's billions of them. Well, it's saying that he made the moon and the stars to rule by night. The moon, we know, is pretty normal. Most planets have moons. So very strange. All this connected to his loving kindness. Without the sun, the moon, and the stars, life wouldn't exist the way we know it. So that has to do with his loving kindness. But then in verse 10, it said, to him who struck down the Egyptian firstborn. Then that's connected to his loving kindness. He just killed little kids. And these little kids, most of them had nothing to do with Pharaoh. How could that be connected to his loving kindness? And it said that him who struck down the Egyptian firstborn. This was his idea, and he directly did it. Very strange to connect that to loving kindness. Hmm. Brought out Israel, and all these things he did to the children of Israel, parting of the Red Sea and overthrowing Pharaoh and his army, led his people through the wilderness, you know. And then when they made it to the promised land, it said, who struck great kings, for his loving kindness endures forever. So even when he's doing these acts, these acts of justice, his loving kindness remains intact. And it said, and killed mighty kings in verse 18. He killed mighty kings, but then it says, in his loving kindness. Very strange, And all these kings that he killed, Sihon and Og, and gave away their land to Israel. Verse 24, and has delivered us from our adversaries, for his loving kindness endures forever. So that's how his loving kindness is. These people stood against God and against his anointed, Israel, you know, and so that's how his loving kindness. If they had accepted God, he would have accepted them. Verse 25, who gives food to every creature because of his loving kindness. Verse 26, oh, give thanks to the God of heaven, for his loving kindness endures forever. We need to see his loving kindness in all things. Once you reorientate your thinking, that all that we call bad and negative, you know, comes out of God's kindness in some way. And I don't quite see it yet. Some of it really bothers me. Bad sickness and born with terrible diseases and people with huge mental difficulties from birth, you know. They have people who get Parkinson's disease. How does this show his loving kindness? That's something I need to deal with more. But I'm working on it in his loving kindness. So this has been all about Psalm 136.